Hi, I'm Mr. Fear, and today I'm going to tell you 3 horror stories about cursed mansions. Don't forget to like the video and follow the channel. Story number 1, The Call of Darkness. The night wrapped Blackwood Manor like a shroud of darkness. It stood atop the hill, its black windows like empty eyes, watching anyone who dared to approach. For years, it was said that something inside still breathed, something that should never have been awakened. Jonas, a paranormal investigator, stopped in front of the rusted gates. The biting wind whispered unintelligible words, and the moon, veiled by smudges of clouds, seemed to refuse to illuminate that cursed structure. But he would not back down. His mission was to document whatever resided within. Cameras, recorders, and flashlights were ready. The world would see what the darkness concealed. As he crossed the threshold, the rancid scent of rotting wood and dampness filled his nostrils. The air was thick, almost liquid, carrying whispers that seemed to seep from the very walls. He ascended the central staircase, each step creaking like a muffled scream. The mansion was not empty. He could feel eyes upon him. Jonas turned on the camera. On the screen, he could see shadows moving where they shouldn't be. A door slammed shut by itself upstairs. Swallowing hard, he climbed up. The narrow hallway stretched out like an endless tunnel, and the darkness pulsed around him. Suddenly, a low, childish cry echoed. He turned the flashlight. At the end of the hallway, a girl in a white dress was staring at him. Her eyes were black spheres with no depth. Jonas stepped back, but in the blink of an eye, the child was closer. "You came too late." Her voice didn't sound human. The lights flickered. The childish cry turned into a guttural, cavernous laugh. Doors slammed violently, and the walls bled a thick, black liquid. A presence was manifesting, something that didn't belong to this world. Jonas ran toward the stairs, but they seemed to stretch, unreachable. He felt a wave of cold take over his body. His fingers trembled as he tried to activate the radio, but only static responded. The girl's laugh now came from all directions. The shadows around him stretched, forming distorted silhouettes that moved in an unnatural way. A whisper brushed his ear, and he felt a cold breath on his neck. "You can't escape." An invisible force shoved him against the wall, and he saw, through the fallen camera, his own image trembling on the screen. But something was wrong. His reflection smiled, even though he hadn't. Desperate, Jonas tried to run to the exit, but the front door had disappeared. The mansion's foyer was now a labyrinth of dark, endless hallways. Every step he took seemed to bring him back to the same spot. The laughter was now a macabre symphony. He fell to his knees, feeling the thin air as the shadows around him closed in. A cold touch ran down his spine, and a cadaverous hand emerged from the floor, grabbing his ankle. Jonas screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the void. Everything went dark. The camera fell to the ground, recording only the echo of an agonizing scream. When the rescue team arrived the next day, all they found was the camera, still on, repeating the last recorded image. Jonas, standing in the hallway, staring at the lens with completely black eyes and a smile that wasn't his. Behind him, the girl with empty eyes whispered something inaudible, while the shadows around her seemed to move, impatient, waiting for their next victim. Story number 2, The Echo of the Dead at Hollow Manor. Hollow Manor was a scar on the landscape, a monstrosity of stone and wood rising atop an isolated hill, surrounded by a forest that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. The twisted trees and gnarled branches formed a natural barrier, as if nature itself was trying to keep the curious at bay. The house was the subject of countless urban legends in the nearby town. It was said that, over a century ago, the Hollow family had vanished without a trace, and since then, the house had remained empty, except for the inexplicable sounds that echoed from its walls at night. Some swear they've seen lights in the windows, others hear muffled screams coming from inside. But no one ever had the courage to investigate. No one, until now. Daniel, a young filmmaker obsessed with fame, saw Hollow Manor as the perfect opportunity for his next documentary. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he knew that one night in that house would provide enough scary content to go viral. With him were his girlfriend Clara, cameraman Marcos, and sound technician Rafael. They all laughed at the town's stories, but as they crossed the manor's gate, an inexplicable sense of weight fell upon the group. The house was enormous, with broken windows and a facade that seemed to smile in a sinister way. The air was cold, despite the summer heat, and the silence was so thick it felt suffocating. Daniel led the group inside, camera in hand, already recording. "Welcome to Hollow Manor," he said to the camera, trying to keep his tone casual. "They say this house is haunted, but we're going to find out if there's any truth behind the legends." The interior was even darker than the exterior. The floor creaked beneath their feet, and the smell of mold and decay was almost unbearable. The walls were covered with old paintings, whose eyes seemed to follow every movement of the group. Clara was the first to notice. "Are you guys seeing this?" she whispered, pointing at a portrait of a woman dressed in black. "It looks like she's watching us." "Don't start, Clara," Daniel replied, laughing, but his voice sounded more tense than he'd like to admit. As they explored the house, small events began to unfold. Rafael heard footsteps behind him, but when he turned around, no one was there. Marcos captured a shadow moving in the corner of the frame, but when he reviewed the footage, there was nothing. Clara swore she heard someone whisper her name, but Daniel insisted it was just the wind. It was in the basement that things started to get truly terrifying. The staircase was narrow and dark, and the air down there was freezing. Daniel pointed the camera at the walls, which were covered in strange symbols drawn with a dark substance that looked fresh. "What the hell is this?" Rafael asked, his voice trembling. Before anyone could respond, the basement door slammed shut, plunging the group into total darkness. The flashlights flickered and went out, and the sound of low laughter echoed through the space. Clara screamed, and Daniel tried to calm her, but his own voice failed when a figure appeared on the camera's screen. A tall, distorted silhouette with eyes that glowed like embers. "We're getting out now," Marcos shouted, but the door wouldn't budge, no matter how hard they tried. That's when the walls began to bleed. A dark, sticky substance dripped down the symbols, forming puddles on the floor. The air grew heavy, and the feeling of being watched became unbearable. Daniel kept recording, even as his hands trembled, while the figure drew closer, its breath ragged and uneven. "You shouldn't have come," a voice whispered, coming from all directions at once. Clara fainted, and Rafael tried to carry her, but something pulled him back, dragging him into the shadows. Marcos screamed, but his voice was drowned out by a guttural sound that seemed to come from the very walls. Daniel fell to the floor, still holding the camera, as the figure loomed over him, its face finally visible, a grotesque mass of flesh and bone, with eyes that reflected endless suffering. The last thing Daniel saw was the camera slipping from his hand, capturing a blurred image of the figure approaching before the screen went black. The next morning, the police found the camera at the gates of Hollow Mansion. The memory card was intact, and the recorded footage was enough to close the case. The group was declared missing, and the house was sealed once again. But on nights of a full moon, the townspeople swear they hear laughter coming from Hollow Mansion and see shadows moving behind the broken windows. And sometimes, a camera is found at the gate, its screen dark, yet still warm to the touch. Story number 3, the last night at Grey Mansion. The rain poured down in torrents, striking the windows of Grey Mansion like invisible fingers clawing at the rotting wood. The wind howled through the twisted trees of the garden, carrying with it a whisper that seemed to echo ancient words no one was meant to hear. It was a night like any other in that cursed house, or at least, that's what Emma thought as she crossed the rusted gate, a flickering lantern trembling in her hand. She didn't want to be there. No one in their right mind would choose to spend the night at Grey Mansion, but Emma had no choice. The house had been inherited by her family after the death of a distant uncle, and now it was her responsibility to prepare it for sale. Just one night, she kept repeating to herself, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest that grew with each step toward the front door. The door creaked as it opened, as if the house itself were protesting the intrusion. The air inside was heavy, thick with a musty smell that made Emma cough. The lantern illuminated only small circles of light, revealing walls covered in peeling wallpaper and old furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts waiting to move. She decided to start with the main hall, where an imposing staircase led to the second floor. As she walked, her footsteps echoed in the silence, but soon she realized she wasn't alone. Other footsteps, lighter and faster, seemed to follow hers. She stopped. The footsteps stopped. She took a deep breath. A low, almost imperceptible laugh came from somewhere above her. "Hello?" Emma called, her voice trembling. The response was a dense silence, broken only by the sound of rain outside. She decided to ignore it, attributing the sound to her imagination. After all, Grey Mansion was known for ghost stories, but Emma had never believed in such things, until now. On the second floor, she found a dark hallway with closed doors on both sides. The first door she tried to open was stuck, but the second one gave way with a creak. Inside, there was a room decorated as if time had stopped decades ago. A canopy bed, a fogged mirror, and a desk covered in yellowed papers. Emma approached the desk, her lantern illuminating a handwritten letter. The ink was faded, but still legible. "They are here. They are always here. No matter where I run, they find me. The house won't let us go. The house consumes us." A chill ran down Emma's spine. Before she could react, the mirror behind her fogged up, as if someone had breathed on it. Slowly, words began to appear, written by an invisible hand. "You shouldn't have come." She spun around, but there was no one there. The lantern fell from her hand, rolling across the floor and extinguishing itself. In the dark, Emma heard something moving, something that wasn't human. The air grew cold, and she felt a presence drawing near, something breathing heavily, as if it were hungry. She ran. She ran through the hallways, tripping over furniture and doors, but the house seemed to be moving, changing, as if it wanted to keep her trapped. The walls creaked, paintings fell, and the whispers that had once been distant were now in her ears, screaming, pleading, threatening. Finally, she found the staircase and ran down, but the front door was locked. All the windows were shut, and the rain outside seemed to have stopped, leaving a deadly silence. Emma looked back and saw shadows moving, taking humanoid shapes, but distorted, as if made of smoke and hatred. "Let me go," she screamed, but the house responded with a guttural laugh coming from all directions. That's when she realized the house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was hungry. In the end, Emma was never found. The Grey Mansion stood tall, untouched, waiting for the next reckless soul to cross its threshold. And as the moon shone over its broken roof, the whispers continued, echoing through the walls, always saying the same thing. "You shouldn't have come.